From Opium to Tourism, the story of the Golden Triangle. For decades, the Golden Triangle was under the control of warlords. The most famous of them was probably Khansah, a Burmese warlord, also known as the Opium King. He ran a large network of opium poppy fields and raw opium processing facilities between the 1960s and 1990s. At his peak, Khansah controlled over 80% of opium production in Myanmar and supplied over half of the world's heroin. He used the money he had earned from heroin to build his own private army. He even declared that Shan State, the region where he had set up his base, should be independent from Myanmar. However, by the 1990s, his influence started to weaken. The growing of a new drug base and the international pressure forced him to surrender to Myanmar in 1996. The Golden Triangle has since gone through changes. Thailand, for one, has replaced opium poppies with sustainable crops such as tea and coffee. In Laos, parts of the region have turned to gambling as a new industry, with casinos drawing visitors to the Golden Triangle. Although its past is filled with crime and hardship, the Golden Triangle has changed into a place where visitors can learn about its history, experience local culture, and enjoy its beautiful scenery.
Welcome back, everyone, to English for You. I'm Adam.
And I'm Elsie.
And last time, everyone, we introduced you to the Golden Triangle, a place where Thailand, Laos, and Myanmar meet. We learned that its mountainous terrain and dense forests made it difficult for governments to control, creating the perfect conditions for growing opium.
We also explored how this led to the region becoming a major center for the global opium trade, supplying heroin to countries like China and the US.
That's right. But there's more to this region than just its past.
That's right. We'll find out how the Golden Triangle has changed and what it looks like now. Let's dive in.
For decades, the Golden Triangle was under the control of warlords. And there we see the noun decade, which is a period of 10 years. So an example sentence using this word would be, the internet has changed a lot in the past decade.
In the past decade, 那就是在过去的10年，所以呀decade 这个名词指的就是10年时间。那另外呢，我们看到的 warlord 指的是军阀，所以数十年来，金三角一直处于军阀的控制之下。
All right, now whenever you hear the word warlord, it kind of tings up your ears. You don't hear that word too often because you don't hear about warlords that often.
So does that mean there are, maybe battles or wars happening in that region?
Yeah, maybe some gunfights here and there, some little skirmishes between the areas that they kind of control. And we're going to learn about a warlord. It says the most famous of them was probably Khansah, a Burmese warlord also known as the Opium King.
其中最著名的可能就是坤沙这个缅甸的军阀，他也被称为鸦片之王。So with the name like that, he sounds dangerous, Why was he called King? K-I-N-G, King.
Yeah, why was he called King? Well, our article says he ran a large network of opium poppy fields and raw opium processing facilities between the 1960s and 1990s. Well, we see in that sentence raw, which is in its natural state, not yet changed or used to make into something else. An example would be factories use raw materials like wood and metal to make furniture and tools.
好，我们看到的形容词 raw R-A-W 它代表的是未经加工的。那另外呢，还有一个名词是 facility， 这个名词呢代表的是用作某种用途的区域啦、场所或是建筑物。所以啊，这个坤沙它在1960年代到1990年代，它是经营着一个庞大的罌粟田还有生鸦片加工设施的网络。Oh, wow. So he was running it. The whole time.
Right, for over 30 years, right? That's a long time to be using or being a drug lord of a whole kingpin area. Well, continuing with his lore and with his mystery, it says, at his peak, Kungsa controlled over 80% of opium production in Myanmar and supplied over half of the world's heroin.
哇，在他的巅峰时期，昆沙控制了缅甸超过80%的鸦片生产哦，并供应了全球超过一半的海洛因。That is a lot.
Yeah, right.
Now we know why he was called king.
Exactly, but that's not all of it, Elsie. Listen to this. It says he used the money he had earned from heroin to build his own private army.
他利用从海洛因中赚来的钱，建立了自己的私人军队，连军队他都有自己的。And that's also why he was called a warlord.
Exactly. Continuing, it says he even declared that Shan State, the region where he had set up his base, should be independent from Myanmar.
Declare 这个动词呢是宣布、宣告或是声明。你后面呢可以接上 that 以及一个名词子句来代表你要声明的事情是什么。那另外呢 declare 后面可能还会直接加上 war。Declare war 那就是宣战。好，那再来，如果是 declare victory， 那是宣布胜利。那如果一个人或是一个公司 declare bankruptcy， 那是宣布破产。所以这边我们说到昆沙，他甚至宣布说，作为他基地的所在地善邦，应该脱离缅甸，成为独立的国家。
But he probably was getting unwanted attention, right? If you're setting up your own private army, you've been doing this for quite some time, you're going to get noticed by some of these other countries, right?
Maybe he was not, scared.
Right, yeah, exactly. Well, our article tells us, however, by the 1990s, his influence started to weaken. And there we see the verb weaken, which is to become less strong or to make something less strong. An example would be, the storm will weaken as it moves away from land.
Weaken 这个动词是变弱或是削弱。好，那我们知道说 weak weak 是虚弱的，加上 en 变成动词变弱削弱。那相反呢，如果你是要去加强强化的话，好，那我们可以用到 strengthen 这个动词。那前面的 strength streng th 好 strength 它是力量，加上 en 变成动词加强强化。
So in the 60s, 70s, 80s, and maybe
90s.
early 90s, he had a lot of power. And now we're in the 90s, and he's starting to weaken over all this time and production of heroin and opium, I'm guessing. So our article gets back by saying, the growing of a new drug base and the international pressure forced him to surrender to Myanmar in 1996. And there we see surrender, which is a verb. It's to admit that you have been defeated and want to stop fighting. An example would be, the army had no choice but to surrender after losing the battle.
Surrender 这个动词就是投降或是认输。Surrender to somebody 那就是向点点点投降或是认输。
That's what I do for you. I surrender to you. When we have an argument, I say, okay, you are right. I surrender.
Oh, wow. You couldn't wait to say this, huh?
Right.
OK, 还有一个呢，就是 surrender 也可以当作名词使用。所以呢，当我们听到无条件投降，就是没有任何条件，他们就是愿意投降的话，那这个叫做 unconditional surrender。那课文这边说到新毒品基地的扩展，还有来自国际的压力，迫使他在1996年向缅甸投降。
So up until 1996, this area was kind of known for being, full of drug lords or, drug traffickers, we sometimes call them, and a very mysterious, dark, and maybe brutal or dangerous place. Now, what has happened since 1996? Our article gets back by saying the Golden Triangle has since gone through changes. And there we see the phrase go through something, which is to experience something difficult. An example would be he had to go through a lot of training to become a doctor.
Go through something 那就是经历自那时以来金三角就经历了许多的变化哦。
Right, and so what kind of changes did they have to go through? Well, it says Thailand, for one, has replaced opium poppies with sustainable crops such as tea and coffee. We see this phrase for one, which is used to give an example from a group. An example would be, many countries are fighting climate change. Germany, for one, has invested in renewable energy. We also see the verb replace, which is to take the place of something. An example would be, many people want to replace plastic bags with paper ones to help the environment, or the company decided to replace old machines with new ones.
还要整理一下，首先看到的 for one 它是列举物中的第一个例子，那如果你说我还要再讲第二个例子的时候怎么办呢？我们可以说 for another， 好 for another 就可以带出第二个例子，所以我们结合这个 for one 跟 for another 来造一个例句哦。I enjoy reading. For one, books provide knowledge.For another, they can be very entertaining. 好，所以呢，这边就带出了两个原因。我喜欢阅读，第一个原因是书籍提供知识，第二个原因是它们也非常具有娱乐性。那另外呢，这个动词 replace 是代替，是取代。Replace A with B， 那就是用 B 去替代取代 A。那还有一个形容词是 sustainable， 它是能永续发展的。现在很常用来形容这个名词 development。好，那这个 sustainable development 就是永续发展。那还有 sustainable energy， 那就是可持续的能源。所以说啊，以泰国为例，泰国已经用茶叶和咖啡等可持续农作物来取代了鸦片罌粟。
So that's a good thing for Thailand. They replaced the opium poppies with sustainable crops like the tea and the coffee. But what about the other ones, right? What's going on with Laos? Well, our article says in Laos, parts of the region have turned to gambling as a new industry, with casinos drawing visitors to the Golden Triangle. There we see the phrase turn to something, which is to start doing or becoming involved with something. An example would be, after losing his job, he turned to writing to earn money.
Turn to something 代表的是开始做某事，可是要注意的是这个 turn to 是个介系词哦，所以你后面要不加上名词，要不要加上的是 VING， 也就是动名词。那另外呢，在这个句子当中我们还看到 casino， 好，指的就是赌场。那在辽国啊，该地区的部分区域已经转向赌博作为新兴的产业，赌场就吸引了游客们来到金三角。
So it's kind of had like a pretty roller coaster history in the last couple of, decades. And it continues to say, although its past is filled with crime and hardship, the Golden Triangle has changed into a place where visitors can learn about its history, experience local culture, and enjoy its beautiful scenery. There we see the word hardship in that sentence, and it's a difficult or painful situation. Using this word in a sentence, we could say, the family went through a lot of hardship after losing their home.
Hardship， 好，这个名词是艰苦，是困难，它是不可数名词哦。所以呢，我们看到的例句啦，或是课文里面的句子，都是以这个单数型出现，因为它不可数。那另外呢 ，scenery 这个名词是风景，是景色，也是一个不可数名词。所以课文最后就说了，尽管金三角的过去充满了犯罪和困难，如今呢，它已经转变成为一个游客们可以了解其历史啦，体验当地文化啦，并且欣赏美丽风景的地方。OK， 同学们不想错过更多精彩的 English for You 内容，就赶快订阅我们的 YouTube channel， 还有追踪 Facebook。
All right, well, everyone, let's dive into our For You chat question. It asks, have you ever visited a place with an interesting or even a dark story? Share your experience.
Wow, I think we have visited a place like this.
Yeah, I think we both have a couple places maybe, but yeah, what's yours?
It was Amsterdam, Netherlands.
Okay, in Amsterdam in the Netherlands, yeah. Where did we go?
So we toured the Anne Frank house, you remember?
That's right.
Where Anne Frank and her family hid during World War II.
Right, and it's famous because she wrote the diary.
Yes.
And a lot of bad things happened in that area because of the Nazis, and she was a very brave girl and died in the end.
Yeah, on that trip, we also visited a lot of places like this, right?
Exactly, yeah. And I have one, I would say I visited or we have visited a place like this. It was Berlin, Germany. When we visited the Berlin Wall, which has a dark history, again, it once divided the country and symbolized the separation between East and West during the Cold War. And we got to see that. There's also a couple other places we could have mentioned. But what about you guys? Have you ever visited a place with an interesting or even a dark story? Well, everyone, that's all the time we have for today. My name is Adam.
And I'm Elsie. See you next time. Bye-bye.
Vocabulary Review.
Decade. Our company has grown so much in the last decade. I hope it grows as much in the next 10 years. Raw. Several steps must be done to raw wool before it is ready to be made into clothes. Weaken. Although they had strong sales 20 years ago, the company's sales weakened and they later went out of business. Surrender. The enemy finally agreed to surrender, which brought peace to both sides after years of war. Replace. The company decided to replace the old computer system with a newer and more advanced one. Hardship. The family faced great hardship when they lost their home after the terrible storm.
智慧小补帖
Warlord. Facility. Declare. Sustainable. Casino.